The rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean. It just made the grease slippery and the high-voltage lines hiss like trapped snakes. I was in the garage bench testing a refurbished 400-amp breaker when the buzzer cut through the storm. I checked my watch. 9:15 p.m. I wasn't expecting materials, and I definitely wasn't expecting company. My social life was currently as disconnected as the copper bus bar sitting on my workbench. I wiped my hands on a rag, the smell of ozone and solvent clinging to my skin, and walked to the main reinforced door. I flipped the monitor. A woman stood there shivering under the overhang. She looked like she'd been dragged through a wind tunnel. Her blazer was soaked through darker at the shoulders, and she was clutching a leather portfolio like it was a life raft. I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the heavy steel door open. "Pierce Castillo?" she asked. Her voice was steady despite the fact that her teeth were nearly chattering. "That's me. I'm Catherine James. I saw your listing for the studio annex. The agency said it was pulled, but She took a breath, tightening her grip on the wet leather. "I need a place. Tonight." I looked her over. She wasn't a drifter. The shoes were expensive, the haircut was precision cut, even if it was currently plastered to her forehead. But her eyes held that specific, hollowed-out look of someone who had run out of contingency plans. I knew that look. I saw it on guys right before they made a mistake that got them electrocuted. "It's not ready," I said, blocking the wind with my shoulder. "I haven't finished the wiring in the kitchenette." "Does the lock work?" she asked. "Yes." "Does the heat work?" "Yes." "Then it's ready enough." She stepped forward, not aggressively, but with the momentum of a falling object that had nowhere else to land. "I just need walls." She opened the portfolio and showed me it wasn't fashion. It was paperwork. The first page was a printed email with a subject line in bold: Meridian Tower, PM appointment, effective immediately. The second page was a notice from an upscale apartment complex, key fob deactivated per management. The third page was worse, an official-looking service packet pre-filled with her name and a blank signature line at the bottom. "Personal liability notice / request for injunction." A process server stamp sat in the corner with a date for first attempt tomorrow. She slid the pages back into the leather like she'd shown too much. "Inspector Vance is trying to serve me," she said. The name landed like a live wire. Not a criminal thing. A legal choke collar. If he gets that paper in my hand, I'm barred from the job site while it's reviewed. 2 weeks. That's the project. That's game over. I didn't speak. She kept going. If I check into a hotel, they scan ID. The system pings my name. He'll have a process server waiting in the lobby before I finish signing. He's done it to other PMs. He doesn't need a gun. He uses policy. Her grip tightened on the portfolio. "I need one night somewhere that doesn't require an ID scan. Just long enough to get ahead of him, finish the week, and keep Meridian alive." That logic made sense. Ugly, clean, bureaucratic violence. I stepped back. It was against my better judgment, but leaving her out in a deluge when I had 2,000 square feet of empty industrial renovation seemed like a code violation of a different kind. "Boots off by the door," I said. "The concrete is polished." She followed me through the main workshop, her heels clicking a fast, anxious rhythm against the floor. I led her up the floating metal staircase to the annex, a glass-walled loft I'd meant to rent out, to offset the mortgage on this money pit. I keyed the code and slid the door open. The space was stark, minimal. White walls, polished gray floors, and a massive low-profile platform bed I'd built myself out of reclaimed timber and steel. She walked to the center of the room and dropped her bag. She didn't look at the view of the city lights blurred by rain. She looked at the bed. She stared at it for a long time, her shoulders finally dropping an inch. "This modern bed looks too big for just me," she whispered. She didn't climb into it. She just sat on the edge like she was testing whether the room would hold her. "You said the walls," I reminded her. "You got walls?" She nodded once and then glanced at the bare section near the headboard. "And I need more soundproofing for my room." I answered the only way I answer most problems. "Oh, okay." I went downstairs, grabbed a thick pack of acoustic foam panels I'd bought for the shop office, and carried it up. No commentary, no questions, just materials. "Mount them with adhesive strips," I said, setting the pack beside her portfolio. "No drilling. Keeps the lease clean." Her eyes lifted to mine. In the bright overhead, the rain had left a faint mascara shadow under one eye, not dramatic, just human. "You keep spare solutions around." "I keep spare everything," I said. "It's how you survive bad wiring and bad people." She exhaled like she'd been holding air since the front gate. Noted. At 4:28 a.m., I heard the annex door open and close with the soft click of someone who respected quiet. I poured coffee. The grinder stayed off. I carried one mug upstairs and stopped at the loft threshold. Catherine was sitting on the bed again, this time with intent. White sleeveless top, black pencil skirt, hair still damp at the ends. Laptop on her knees, phone on speaker, hard hat on the floor, like a promise she was about to keep. She looked up at me with that same iron-edged smile I'd seen for half a second the night before. "You're not sleeping," I said. "I can sleep after Friday," she replied. "Vance doesn't need me exhausted. He'll do it himself." I leaned against the door frame in a gray t-shirt mug in my hand. She watched my face, not the coffee, not the bed. Me. She pointed at the foam panels. "Those are going up. Today." "Good," I said, and set the mug down on the nightstand. "Drink. Then we make sure your job doesn't get strangled by paperwork." It wasn't flirting. It was a plan. "It's a standard king," I said, keeping my voice flat. "Bedding is in the closet. Thermostat's the digital panel. Don't set it above 72. The radiant floor takes time to adjust." She held my gaze. "Thank you, Mr. Castillo. I'll have the money in your account in 10 minutes. Pierce, one corrected. "And don't thank me yet. The coffee grinder downstairs starts at 5 o'clock a.m., and I don't turn it off for anyone." "I'm up at 4:30, she said, almost smiling. "I won't hear it." I found out what she was fighting for later that same morning. I was contracted to consult on voltage regulation for the Meridian Tower project, downtown, a 30-story glass needle that was currently 3 months behind schedule and bleeding money. My job was to tell them why their temporary power kept tripping the main grid. I arrived at 6 a.m., hard hat under my arm, multimeter in my holster. The site trailer was already chaos. Voices were raised. "You can't just red tag the entire second floor, Vance." "We have concrete trucks lined up," I knew that voice. It wasn't the foreman. It was Catherine. I stepped inside. The wet blazer was gone, replaced by a crisp blouse and a hard hat that looked brand new. She stood behind the main desk, surrounded by men who were shouting. She wasn't shouting. She was typing. "Inspector Vance," she said, her voice cutting through the noise like a wire stripper. "The concrete pour is for the foundation. Your stop work note is for temporary wiring on level 2. Put your claim in writing with the code section." Vance looked like he was made of dough and bad intentions. He sneered. "I'm the authority here, sweetheart. I say it's unsafe, it's unsafe." I stepped forward, letting the trailer door thud shut behind me. The room went quiet. I didn't look at Catherine. I looked at Vance. "Inspector," I said. "The lady is right." Vance turned his face, reddening. "Castillo. I didn't know you were on this job." "Consultant," I said. And Section 405.2 specifically exempts structural pours from electrical stop work orders unless the rebar is being used as a grounding electrode without bonding. Which it isn't. I checked it myself. I walked to the desk, placed my hands on the blueprints, and leaned in. You want to stop the trucks? I kept my tone level. Go ahead. But I'll file a formal interference complaint with the state board by noon. And I write very detailed reports. Vance's eyes flicked to Catherine, then back to me. He sniffed, adjusting his clip-on tie. Fine. Poor. But I'm watching you, Castillo. And you, Miss James. One spark and I shut this whole tower down. He stormed out. The other men shuffled their feet and went back to work. Catherine stopped typing. She looked up at me, controlled, but the tension was there. You're the electrical consultant, she said. And you're the new project manager, I replied. You didn't mention that last night. I didn't want my situation to become your problem, she said. In this town, I said, everything becomes somebody's problem. I tapped the desk. Vance isn't chasing safety. He's chasing leverage. Don't hand him any. I don't pay bribes, she said, cool as steel. Good. Because your temporary power grid is a disaster. I need access to the main vault. She opened a drawer and slid me a key card. Her hand brushed mine quick and unromantic like a baton pass. Fix it, Pierce, she said. I need to stay on that site. If he serves me, I'm out. I'll keep the lights on, I said. You keep the trucks moving. For 2 weeks, we moved around each other like satellites in a synchronized orbit. At the warehouse, it stayed quiet. She paid rent instantly. She didn't take space she didn't need. I'd come home and find a single glass rinsed in the sink, or the throw blanket on the sofa folded at a perfect 45-degree angle. The tension wasn't cheap. It was structural. 2 people used to control sharing a building where neither could afford to slip. One Tuesday night, I came home late, covered in drywall dust. Catherine was at the kitchen island, laptop open, surrounded by spreadsheets. She was rubbing her right temple, a steady, pained motion. You're squinting, I said, opening the fridge. The lighting in here is terrible for reading, she muttered without looking up. It's atmospheric. It's not practical. It's 2,700 Kelvin warm white, I said. Built for decompression, not auditing. I don't decompress, she said. I leaned against the counter. I noticed. She stopped rubbing her temple and finally looked up. Vance is escalating. He's demanding certifications on equipment we rented months ago. If I can't produce maintenance logs by Friday, he'll slap the project with a $50,000 fine. Then he'll offer to make it go away. The vendor has those logs, I said. The vendor filed bankruptcy last week, she said, jaw tight. Records are in a dead system. So you're reconstructing them. I'm trying to find a legal path for secondary verification. She exhaled. I'm tired, Pierce. I watched her. She looked precise, even when exhausted, like a blueprint that refused to tear. Move your laptop, I said. What, move it? She slid the computer aside. I walked to the dimmer switch. I pulled a small screwdriver from my pocket. I didn't go anywhere without one, and popped the faceplate off. What are you doing? Bypassing the dimmer constraint. The LEDs are rated for higher lumen output. I capped them to save energy. I twisted 2 dials on the internal restrictor, snapped the plate back on, and slid the slider up. The kitchen flooded with crisp, bright, neutral light. Catherine blinked. Her hand dropped from her temple. The relief on her face was immediate. Better I asked. Much, she said, and it wasn't a compliment. It was a fact. Thank you. Don't thank me, I said. Just beat him. I started up the stairs, then stopped. Catherine. Yes, there's a fresh pot of coffee set for 4:30. If you want tea tonight, the kettle is variable temp. Green tea is button 3. She stared at me like I'd handed her a weapon. Then she nodded. Button 3. Got it. Wednesday, I put competence on the table the way I always did, quiet, measurable, hard to argue with. At Meridian, I installed a portable power quality logger on the temporary feed. Palm-sized box leads like thin snakes. No drama. Just proof. While the crew shouted about schedules, I watched the waveform. The spikes weren't random. They were a patterned harmonic distortion from a cheap variable frequency drive someone had tied into the temp panel without filtering. By noon, I had time-stamped graphs and a list of exact breaker trips down to the second. I walked into Catherine's trailer and dropped the printouts on her desk. "What is that?" she asked, already leaning forward. "Evidence," I said. "Your temp grid isn't mysteriously failing. One piece of equipment is poisoning the feed. I'll correct the wiring. You correct the story." Her eyes moved fast, scanning data like it was a contract. Then she looked up and something clean shifted in her expression. Respect, not romantic, not performative. "You don't just solve problems," she said. "You close the loop. I told you," I said. "No temporary fixes." That afternoon, when Vance came prowling again, Catherine didn't argue. She slid my report across the table, calm as a judge. The foreman backed it with his signature. Vance had to take the paper. Paper doesn't flinch. The midpoint twist arrived on a Thursday in the form of a registered packet taped to my front door. I pulled it down as I walked in. Catherine was right behind me carrying groceries. She saw my face change as I read. "What is it?" she asked. "Vance," I said. "He's not just hitting the site. He's hitting my property. He's flagging the annex as an illegal dwelling unit, based on a zoning technicality from 1998. Apples rolled out of the grocery bag. Catherine didn't move. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means he's trying to evict you," I said. "And he's trying to tag my license for harboring unsafe occupancy." Her face drained. "He found me. He found an angle," I said. "He's a bully. He uses stamps and deadlines." "I have to leave," she said, voice tight. "If he makes this stick, you lose your license." "With what plan?" I asked. "He's trying to serve you at a hotel." "You said that yourself." "That's not your problem." It became my problem when he taped it to my door. I stepped closer, stopping just inside her space without touching her. "You're not leaving. If you leave, he wins. He proves you can be pushed out with paperwork." "Pierce, no," I said, and I kept it calm. "He made a mistake." "What mistake?" He cited 1998. "This building was retrofitted in 2015 under the Industrial Live/Work Ordinance. I have the permits. They're just not digitized." "Where are they?" "In the city archives," I said. "Basement level. Same building where Vance likes to swing his badge." Catherine's fears set and hardened into focus. "He thinks we're sloppy," she said. "He thinks we're alone," I corrected. "He doesn't know we're coordinated." "Partners," she said. The word hung there simple and heavy. "Right," I said. "Partners. Tomorrow we go to the archives. You handle the clerk. I handle the blueprints." The city archives sat in the basement of a concrete building that smelled like wet paper and old coffee. Catherine walked in like she'd paid taxes here her whole life, hair pinned back, voice, polite eyes, sharp. "Hi," she said to the clerk, sliding her ID across the counter. "We're here for retrofit permits tied to the 2015 Industrial Live/Work Ordinance. Address 1147 Rainier Industrial." The clerk blinked, then tried to blink slower, like that would make us go away. "Those are not digitized." "I know," Catherine said, and smiled without warmth. "That's why I'm here." While she kept the clerk busy with forms and a public records request receipt, I moved through the aisles of flat files and microfiche drawers. Blueprints have a language. So do people who hide them. I found the ordnance binder. I found the cross-reference index. I found the permit numbers scribbled in pencil on a margin no one checks. When I pulled the file, it was thicker than I expected. Permit, final inspection sign-off, electrical scope letter, and a stamped sheet with Vance's name on it from years ago, approving the retrofit. Catherine's eyes narrowed. He signed off on this. Which means he's lying now, I said. And lying on paper is different. She photographed every page, then asked the clerk for certified copies with the seal. The clerk hesitated. Catherine placed a printed public records request on the counter, already filled out, already dated. If you refuse, I'll note it. If you comply, you're protected. Your call. Certified copies appeared like magic. By the time we left, we weren't just carrying permits. We had time-stamped photos, certified seals, and a receipt number proving we'd requested Vance's full inspection history on every project he'd touched in the last 18 months. We had a blade. We just hadn't swung it yet. The next few weeks were day job grinding and night shift strategy. We turned my dining table into a war room. Catherine built a timeline of Vance's service attempts, cross-referencing them with complaints from other contractors. I pulled specs on every job he'd red-tagged and matched the dates to his paperwork patterns. We were tired. We were stressed. But we were coordinated. Vance tried to break that coordination in public. He showed up with 2 other inspectors and a small camera crew angling for a humiliation clip right outside the trailer line. Project manager James, he announced, voice high for the lens, "Are you running this job while hiding in an unpermitted unit to dodge lawful service?" Phones came out. That was his weapon optics and paperwork. Catherine's jaw set, but I stepped in before she fed him anything useful. "Inspector Vance," I said, calm and loud enough for the mic. "Here's the certified 2015 retrofit permit. Here's your historic sign-off. If you want to dispute it, do it in writing. If you keep retaliating, I file with the state board and submit our archive receipt numbers." I held the papers where the camera could see the seal. Catherine aligned. She didn't defend. "If you have a safety violation, put it in writing," she said, and turned back to work. Vance left with nothing usable. That night, another notice appeared at my warehouse door, an immediate occupancy inspection within 48 hours. I mounted a camera over the entry that logged time and motion. When Vance showed up the next afternoon with his clipboard, I met him at the threshold. "No entry without proper authorization," I said. "I'm recording. Any contact goes through counsel." Catherine stood behind me, steady a witness with a spine. Vance stared, measured, then walked back to his truck. He wasn't done, but neither were we. One night, a storm knocked out power to the neighborhood. The warehouse went pitch black. I heard Catherine inhale sharply in the darkness. "Stay put," I called from the living room. "I'm coming." I navigated by memory, counting steps. I found her near the stairs. I didn't grab her. I clicked on the heavy-duty flashlight I kept on my belt and aimed it high, diffusing the beam so it wasn't harsh. Her face was pale in the soft light. "I hate the dark," she said, voice thin. "First year on a site, the temporary power failed. I got trapped in a dead elevator for 40 minutes. No lights, no signal, just metal and breathing." I nodded once. "No pity, just data." "I have a backup generator for essential circuits," I said. "Give me 5 minutes." "Okay," she whispered. The word held. I went to the garage. I didn't just flip a switch. I watched the transfer switch engage, checked frequency, waited until the hum was steady and clean. When I came back, the lights were on, not all of them, just the warm ones. The kitchen, the hall, the path to her room. She was sitting on the bottom step, shoulders lowering as the building stopped feeling like a trap. "You left the path lit," she said. "Always," I said. She stood and walked close enough to be real, not theatrical. "Pierce," she said softly, "why are you doing all this? You could have refused me and kept your life quiet." "I don't break contracts," I said. It was the safe answer. She watched me like she was deciding whether to accept safe. "Is it just a contract?" she asked. I could have given her poetry. I didn't. "You're competent," I said. "I respect competence, and I don't let bullies win by paperwork." She reached out and straightened the collar of my work shirt. Her fingers lingered for a half-second at my neck, then pulled away. "I'm glad you're on my side, Pierce." "I'm not on your side," I said, voice low. "I'm on your flank? I've got your blind spot." The climax hit 2 days before the project deadline. A storm system slammed into the coast. Wind gusts hammered the city. Meridian Tower was in the final stages of the electrical tie-in. The call came at 2 a.m. Elias, my foreman, sounded like he was swallowing rain. "Pierce, you need to get down here. The main transformer vault is flooding. Pumps failed. If the water hits the bus bars while the grid is live, it's going to blow the whole block. And Vance is here. He's threatening to cut the utility feed, which kills the timeline permanently." I was out of bed before he finished. I hit Catherine's door with my knuckles hard. "Get dressed," I called. "We're going to the site." The drive was white-knuckle. Debris skittered across the highway. Catherine was already on the phone coordinating legal pressure. "If he cuts power, the aviation warning lights go out," she said into the line. "That's not leverage. That's a life safety violation. Get the city attorney on record now." We skidded onto the site. It was chaos. Rain lashed sideways. Emergency lights flashed. The smell of wet concrete and ozone hit like a punch. Vance stood near the utility disconnect, shouting at a utility worker to pull the handle. "Don't touch that handle," I roared, jumping out. I ran toward them. Vance turned face wet and furious. "The vault is flooding, Castillo. It's a hazard. If you cut power, the sump pumps can't restart," I shouted over the wind. "You guarantee an explosion. I'm not risking my neck," Vance yelled. "Catherine," I barked. She was already there. She stepped between Vance and the utility worker and held up her phone screen bright in the rain. "This is an emergency directive from the city attorney's office," she said, voice steel hard. "If you cut power without authorization from the fire marshal, you're personally liable for damages. That's not a threat. That's your name on it." Vance hesitated. For the first time, paperwork pointed back at him. "I'm going into the vault," I said. "You're crazy," Elias yelled, grabbing my arm. "It's underwater." "Pumps are jammed," I said. I bypass the float control, manually clear the impeller, get flow back before the water hits the 12 kilovolt lines. That's the only move. I grabbed my insulated rescue hook and my tool bag. "Pierce," Catherine said, grabbing my sleeve. Her grip was tight, not delicate. "Is it safe?" I met her eyes. "No," I said. "But I'm the best option." She held the look, then released. 5 minutes, she said. "If you're not out in 5, I'm sending the fire crew." "Deal." The vault was a concrete throat. Water waist-deep, rising, freezing. The hum of live transformers was a vibration in my teeth. Death sat 6 inches above the waterline, invisible and patient. I waded to the pump control panel. The water was opaque. I couldn't see the jam. I had to use my hands. I took a breath and reached into the submerged housing. Fingers found debris, a chunk of concrete wedged against the impeller. I pulled. It didn't move. The water climbed. I braced my boots, planted my shoulder, and pulled again, every ounce of forearm and back. Snap. The concrete chunk came free. The pump roared like an animal waking up. Water swirled and dropped, sucked toward the drain. I climbed out, gasping, soaked in muck and rain. Vance watched, pale, suddenly quiet. Catherine ran to me. "No theatrics, just a fast assessment. both hands on my face, checking my eyes, my focus. "You're here?" she said, breath shaking once. "You're here." "Pumps are running," I rasped. "Grid stays stable. You've got your deadline." She turned to Vance without raising her voice. "The hazard is abated," she said. "The site is compliant. Leave." Vance looked at the pump flow, looked at the sealed directive on her phone, looked at the cameras still rolling. He realized he had nowhere clean to stand. He walked away. The project finished on time. Catherine submitted our certified archive packet and inspection timeline. Vance didn't go to jail. He didn't need to. He got what bullies hate most, light. Administrative review, oversight. A record he couldn't talk his way out of. 2 weeks later, the sun showed up like it was trying to apologize. Catherine walked into my kitchen in jeans and a sweater portfolio tucked under her arm. "The lease is up today," she said. My stomach tightened. I kept scrubbing the counter like it mattered. "Right. You got your bonus. You can afford a penthouse now." "I can," she said. She placed a document on the counter. "I'm not moving to a penthouse, Pierce." I stopped scrubbing. No. It's lonely at the top." Her eyes flicked to the ceiling lights I'd tuned for her. "And the lighting is usually terrible." She slid the document toward me. It wasn't a rental agreement. It was a partnership deed. Castillo and James Infrastructure Solutions. I handle contracts, logistics, and bureaucrats, she said. You handle voltage safety and impossible fixes. And the living arrangements, I asked, voice, steady, not soft. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a key. My spare, the one I'd handed her that first night without knowing what I was doing. She placed it on top of the paper. "I was hoping we could renegotiate the terms," she said. "I'm ready to upgrade from the annex." To what I asked. "To the main house." A pause, then the smallest lift of her chin. "And maybe the bed is too big for just one person after all." I walked around the counter. I wiped my hands on my jeans. I didn't grab her. I didn't rush. I covered her hand with mine, pressing her palm flat against the cool granite. "I have a rule," I said. Her eyebrow rose. "Of course you do." "The rule is," I said, leaning in until I could feel her warmth, no shortcuts. No temporary fixes. Her fingers turned under mine, deliberate. She interlaced with me and stepped closer, not retreating. Her eyes stayed on mine. Permanent, she said, one clean word. That was consent. Physical and clear. I kissed her then. Not desperate, not frantic. Precise, deliberate. Like closing a circuit that had been open too long. I used to think solitude was safety. Fewer variables. Fewer failures. Then Catherine showed up with a storm at her back and a deadline on her name, and I learned something simple. A solid teammate is safer than any locked door. You don't win by hiding. You win by holding the line together.